Peace be upon you, friends. With you is your friend Darum. I ask you to support the channel by subscribing, liking, and posting motivating comments and an enjoyable viewing experience for you. The people who were in my room continued their prayers, and I was not able to leave the bathroom. I stayed there for about an hour. I left the bathroom after the sun had risen from the sky and the time for my first lecture approached. I went and prepared like any other morning and then left the house, heading to the university. I got into my car and the engine started smoothly, and it did not occur to me that the malfunction that happened yesterday was a coincidence or something else. I was confused and went directly to the university until the end of the day. I returned a little before sunset because I did not return home directly that day, and when I entered my room, I remembered what happened to me yesterday, and my chest became a little tight, but I ignored it. When it was 9 o'clock, I decided to leave the house, as was my daily habit, so I went to the bathroom to shower, and moments after I entered the bathroom, I heard a sound that I will never forget. I heard the voice of a small child crying, and the sound was coming from my room, and only at that moment did I realize that that book had opened a door to evil for me, and the issue was not just illusions. The sound of crying stopped after a minute or a little more, and I quickly left the bathroom and the room, headed to my car, and started the engine, saying to myself, "What is happening?" I was on my way to my friends, who I used to meet every night, but I found myself heading to the house of my relative who gave me the book. I knocked on the door, and his son opened it for me. I asked about his father, and he told me. He is sleeping. So I told him to wake him up for an emergency, and I had to meet him. The son reluctantly agreed and invited me to enter the council and asked me to wait until he woke up his father. My relative came into me with sleep still in his eyes and said to me, "What do you want?" I told him what happened to me from the first day until the moment I came to him, and he responded to me with a strange coldness and said, "But what you say is just myths." So I swore to him that this was what happened to me. He said, "What do you want from me now?" I told him that I wanted an explanation for what was happening because these things did not happen until I read the book he had given me. He said, "I have not slept at this time for 40 years, and today, for the first time, I sleep like a stone. I am sorry, my son, but now you will live with those who lived with me all these years." I shouted at him and said, "Who do you mean?" He said, "I don't mean anyone." Then he got up and left me alone in the council. I left, confused and afraid to return home, so I called my family and said to them, "I will not come back tonight, and I will spend the night with one of my friends." I went to the nearest hotel and stayed there that night. In the morning, I returned home to take my diaries and go to university, and I found my room upside down and in complete chaos. When I asked my family about the reason for this chaos, they said, "No one has entered it since you left yesterday." I stood watching the chaos of the room as I remembered the old man's words last night, and I remember the look of relief in his eyes to get rid of the worry and suffering that he had suffered from for many years. I kept tidying the room and did not go to university that day. Nothing was broken, but most of my belongings were upside down or thrown on the floor, and when I finished, I noticed that book on the floor. So I took it and started flipping through its pages. But this time, for a reason I do not know, I began to understand the words, understand the meanings, and connect them to each other. So I sat reading it with passion until... In the afternoon, after I finished reading, I only realized what had happened to me, as it was mentioned on one of the pages of the book. One of the pages mentioned that whoever reads this book will be linked, but he did not mention what, but he mentioned that the link will not be broken except when another person reads the book and wants to do so with complete conviction. Then I realized that the thing that was connected to me was what made that old man not sleep for all those years. I flipped through the book looking for another way to break the link, but I found nothing among those worn pages. That night, I went back to my old relative and sat with him, even though he initially refused to meet me, but I insisted on his son to convince him to meet me, and when he submitted to my insistence and I sat to talk to him, he confirmed all my conclusions, so I said to him, "Why did you do that?" "With me," he said, "the choice was yours, and I did not force you to do anything." So I asked him if there was a way to get rid of them without throwing them on someone else. He said, "I have searched for many years and have not found a solution to this problem." So I suggested ruqya to him as a solution to this problem. He said, "Try it, for God is capable of everything." We were silent for a few minutes. Then I asked permission to go out. And before I left, he said to me, "Try the Quran." I said, "What is the companion?" He said to me, "A devil has been with you since your birth, and he has no power over you or authority other than whispering. But if you release him, he may expel everyone around you from the jinn." I said to him sarcastically, "Why didn't you try?" He said, "I read in more than one book about him and his brutality when he is divorced and liberated from his owner, so I preferred to stay with those with me, especially since at that time I began to get used to their presence." So I said to him, "How do I free him?" He said to me, "Are you confident in your request?" I told him, "Do I have another choice?" He said, "Wait here for a little while and I will come back to you." The old man was gone for quite a while, and I sat waiting for him while I was flipping through that book that opened the gates of hell for me. Then he came back and gave me another book and said to me, "I do not advise you to read it, as I did not dare to do so, but you are free to do what you do." So I took the book from him and said, "God suffices me, and he is the best disposer of affairs." I headed home thinking about his words, and the first book and the second book, until I arrived. I went to my room and did not open the second book. I went straight to bed, and shortly after I fell asleep, I woke up to a sound resembling a faint whistling in my ears. I got up in fright, and the sound stopped immediately. I tried to go back to sleep after that, but I could not. After an hour of repeated attempts, I was able to go back to sleep. I woke up to another sound similar to the hissing of a snake coming from under my bed. In the same way, the sound stopped when I woke up. I went back to sleep and once again woke up to a sound that I did not go back to sleep after. There was a sound of loud laughter coming from the bathroom, and the sound did not stop even after I woke up. Because I was a young man in my early 20s, I had not memorized all of the remembrances, and I did not read the Quran a lot, so this thing did not occur to me at that time. So I remained in bed, hugging my pillow in fear, with my eyes watching the bathroom door until the laughter stopped. I left the room immediately after the laughter stopped and went downstairs and found my younger brother standing in the middle of the kitchen, looking at me while smiling. I spoke to him, and he did not answer me, so I approached him and put my hand on his shoulder and was shocked, like an electric shock, and fell to the floor and only woke up to the sound of something my father said in the morning. "Get up!" I quickly headed to my room, and my father followed me with fear in his eyes about the situation he found me in, and I said to him, "Don't care, don't care." I took the second book and went out to the courtyard of the house and sat in the garden and opened the book, and before I could read a word from it, my mother called me and said, "Aren't you going to university today?" I said to her out loud, "No." This is the first time I have spoken to her in this way, as I am not naturally temperamental, and my mother was the only person in my life to whom I could not contradict her, no matter what she asked or raise my voice to her. But this time, my mind was not in my mind because of the fear that gripped me. My mother left and did not respond to me, and despite my remorse at the same moment, I could not catch up with her and apologize to her because my mind was busy searching for a solution to what I was in. I was like an addict searching for a dose that would stop his dismembered pain. I quickly opened the book and it was as before, without an index, page numbers, publishing house, etc., but the number of pages was fewer and its cover was black. The book was written in a strange format. He was addressing me as if he knew me, and he was talking about my peers as if he was a brother to me and a friend who longed to meet me. When I reached the preparation page, I found it at the top of the page, a word that deviates from the rest of the words in the book. That was the only handwritten word in the book, and it said, "Jinn." At that time, I did not pay any attention to it, although it caught my attention and I continued reading. The method mentioned in the book for preparing my horns required the absence of the sun as one of the elements of preparation, so I waited until the sun went down and then went directly to my room, then to the bathroom, and closed the door because I also needed the mirror as one of the elements of preparation, as he said. I wrote the book and carried out to the letter what was written on the preparation page. The process was tiring and exhausting, but after completing it, nothing happened. I came out of the bathroom and the room was quiet in an unprecedented manner. I felt afraid because it was unusually quiet. Even the sound of the street, through which I was accustomed to hearing the voices of neighbors, passers-by, and cars, I did not hear. All I could hear was my breathing, my heartbeat, and the sound of my saliva, which I swallowed from stress. I went to bed after that and slept undisturbed that night. The next night, I expected that I would face the harassment that would start as soon as I went to bed. But for the second time, nothing happened. The atmosphere was calm and there was peace in the place. This happened again on the third night as well, and this continued for a month until I completely forgot about the topic. I remembered the events in a moment when we received the news of the death of my elderly relative who gave me the 2 books. Frankly, I did not feel very sad for him. We went to the cemetery to bury him, and I was so envious of him for what he did to me that I did not pray for his forgiveness during the funeral prayer, but I forgave him and prayed for him when I saw his body descending to the ground, wrapped in a piece of white cloth. When we started to bury him, my shoulder collided with the shoulder of a strange-looking man who looked at me with a strange look and smiled at me with an even stranger smile. People started to leave, and it was afternoon, so I went with my father to the car, and before I got in, I heard a call behind me saying, "Wait, wait."